Are you interested in hosting multiple guests on your show to discuss a particular topic? CFRC volunteers are encouraged to invite panelists to our studios, where they may participate in live or pre-recorded discussion on specific topics and themes, a conversation that you, as host, can facilitate. Panel discussions involve multiple voices, not just your own, so there are a number of important factors to keep in mind while planning for and ultimately facilitating such a conversation.
There are many benefits that panel discussions provide. Firstly, multiple perspectives are important for listeners to hear, offering audiences opportunities to consider new ideas that may not have occurred to them. Rather than having one speaker speaking from one perspective, a panel lets many people bring in their own expertise and experiences that fosters greater dialogue and critical thinking. Further, rather than bringing on a single speaker, a panel can help you capture more listeners by drawing upon the wider network your guests attract, and will also present a lively discourse that you will facilitate. Unlike lectures, where the same message or idea may be repeated by one person, panels are more engaging and dynamic insofar as they are also unscripted, with panelists speaking to each other and addressing each other's perspectives, which can elicit new ideas through the power of conversation, similar to brainstorming.
Careful, advanced preparation for your panel discussion will help you ensure smooth, polished flow and facilitation, help your guests stay on topic and within allotted speaking times, and ensure the topic under a discussion is fleshed out meaningfully for your audience. In the advanced preparation, be sure to do research on the topic and the experts you wish to invite to the panel. Be sure to have a breadth of expertise and perspectives so that different opinions will be captured. Develop insightful, open-ended questions while keeping your program length in mind. Write and rehearse a brief intro and outro script with the CFRC station ID, your program name, and an introduction or recap of the topics and your speakers. Logistical considerations must also be taken into account. Learn to pronounce people's names, know their title, and area of expertise, and rehearse pronunciations in advance for more difficult names so you'll be confident and respectful on air. It's always a good idea to reach out directly to guests and ask them to email you phonetic pronunciation while also verifying their preferred titles and pronouns. You can also verify other facts, including their job title, social media handles, and more. Don't forget that the other important logistical considerations include the technology. Reach out to our technical manager in advance to do your training to set up CR1 and Studio A and review our online how-to guides on CFRC's website. Be sure to also book the studio space to reserve the full block of time you require. Don't forget to tell your guests how to get to the station at 62 Fifth Field Company Lane, noting there is street parking nearby. Finally, be prepared to pivot to Zoom-based discussion in the event of bad weather or illness that may prevent anyone from attending in person, and ensure each of your guests has access to the meeting link. Set this up in advance so it's ready to share.
Okay, so you are ready to roll in the studio and are armed with all of your preparations. The day has finally arrived when your guests will join you for an exciting conversation on your program. We've got a few more recommendations for things to take care of on the day of your panel discussion. Firstly, print out your questions, your introduction, and outro notes. At the same time, create several note cards indicating 20 seconds, 10 seconds, and 5 seconds so you can silently and gently let your guests know they are running out of time with a response and to wrap it up. You can also grab pencils and blank paper to provide to your guests who may use them for note-taking during the discussion. You may also wish to have a pencil and paper so you can jot notes down that will help you deliver a clear summary during your outro. After gathering your supplies, be sure to arrive at least an hour ahead of your intended broadcast or recording time to undertake the studio setup, including equipment, software, and also furniture. Leave time to locate backup headphones, microphones, and cabling in case a quick replacement during sound check is required, and review CFRC's online how-to guides if required. Don't forget to load your intro and outro music and PSAs, station IDs, and promos as required. Ask your guests to arrive at least 20 minutes before their scheduled time and monitor the door to let them in. Escort them to Studio A or the lounge so they can have an opportunity to mingle after you introduce each arrival to each other. During this icebreaker time, you can also take mental notes of who may be a little quieter and who might be more extroverted, which is useful knowledge when facilitating the conversation. Finally, at least 10 minutes before your live show or recording time, seat all of your guests and undertake a sound check to ensure everyone's microphones and headsets are picking up and functioning properly, and that your soundboard and recording software are set up correctly.
And at last, all of your preparations are done, and it's time to sit down and start your panel. Let's review some helpful tips to set you up for a successful, well-facilitated discussion. Whether you are recording or going live, be sure to count your guests in with 30-second notice, 10-second notice, and 5-second notice. Then cue your music and read your introductory script that includes introduction to the topic, your guests, and a reminder about speaking time limits. After the introduction, ask your quietest guest the first question. Watch the clock and remind them quietly with your cue cards that they need to wrap up. Following their response, ask your next guest their thoughts on the same question, or allow them to comment on what they just heard from their peer. Continue the process until each guest has had a chance to respond to the first question before moving on to the next one. While you have prepared questions in advance, be prepared to pivot if and when conversation naturally takes a new, exciting direction. You'll likely want to ask follow-up questions or allow panelists to follow up on a particularly intriguing idea. Pay attention to time limits and steer the conversation back naturally to the next item for discussion. Throughout the conversation, between guests, be sure to also verbalize something to the effect of, "Now over to Dr. Smith," so your audience knows who is speaking with each transition. Be sure to rotate who gets to respond to a question first, so everyone has this opportunity. Rotate the order of follow-ups as well among guests. Continue monitoring time and using your note cards gently remind guests if they are running out of time. It's a good idea to also be mindful of the occasional need to redirect conversation to others, where one or two guests may be dominating the discussion. Also, be mindful of redirecting conversation back to the main topic if the conversation veers entirely off topic. Finally, do be mindful that you as a host are there to moderate a conversation and provide a general theme and trajectory, but it is the panelists whose ideas are of interest to audiences, and their voices and ideas are primary. Try to limit your own comments during the conversation and summarize the outcomes of the conversation during your outro. As you approach the final 5 or 6 minutes of the program, do be sure to let audiences and guests know that you only have a few minutes left, so you could ask for last-minute thoughts with a limit of 1 minute per guest. You'll want to allow yourself at least a minute or two to deliver your outro that includes thanks to your guests and a summary of the discussion at minimum, along with your outro music. If you are pre-recording, you can of course point to a longer version of the broadcast that may be available via podcast and direct audiences to where that podcast will be located.
Thank you for joining us for this video on best practices for moderating a panel discussion, another new CFRC training segment brought to our volunteers through the generous support of the Community Radio Fund of Canada's Radiometres program. Do you have other recommendations we can share with fellow volunteers? We'd love to hear them. Reach out to station@cfrc.ca.